Hello there. Time now for our newspaper review, and Aaron and I take a look at what's making headlines all around the globe. Now, let's start with the Daily Telegraph. Belgium's Prime Minister is calling for a review of passport-free travel in Europe after a shooting on a high-speed train on Friday in northern France. The gunman was overpowered by passengers on the train.
Indeed he was. What about this one? The Wall Street Journal, the Asia edition, reports on the talks between North and South Korea, which come amid a military standoff between those two nations. The South Korean president is calling for an apology from the North.
Yeah, and the China Daily reporting that the country's cabinet's given approval to allow pension funds access to the mainland stock market. That's your top story today, isn't it, Aaron?
It is indeed.
Meanwhile, Asian markets, they've fallen sharply in early trading over fears about China's economic health.
Monday mayhem, market mayhem. The Financial Times writes about Israel importing as much as 3/4 of its oil from Iraq's Kurdish region. Now, the paper reports that it's a lifeline for Kurds in the cash-strapped semi-autonomous area.
The Gulf News has the reopening of Britain's embassy in Iran, a signal, the paper says, of better ties between the two nations.
OK, here you go, Baxty. What about this one? You sick of the boss and need to rant about it? Well, the Gulf News Business Edition, or section, features an online app that lets users vent by posting their workplace frustrations anonymously. Until it gets out, and then you're in trouble, and then you're fired. Great.
We've all been there. We've all been there. Let's talk about that and everything else besides with Cornelia, Meyer, CEO of business consultancy Emerald Corporation. Morning. Thanks for coming.
Good morning.
This morning. OK, we'll get on to ranting about our colleagues in just a moment. But first, let's look at the Daily Telegraph, because we're still reeling, aren't we, from those extraordinary videos that we've seen on mobile phones and just stories of bravery about the ordinary people who overpowered this would-be assassin on this train from France. But it's given rise to this debate now about whether we are going to start to see the curb of freedom of movement across the EU, which is, of course, one of the founding tenets of it. So this is
and I've actually
issue.
wondered about that for a long time. I've wondered when we had Schengen and we didn't have to show passports anymore. And it's interesting. I travel, as you know, on business, travel a fair bit, and I also travel a fair bit to the continent. And this you don't have to show the passport, but then you're somewhere in a train and from, between Bern and Zurich, and some border control person wants to see your identification, and you go like, hang on a minute. I mean, this is not good.
And of course, in the UK, we're not a member of the Schengen zone.
Exactly.
Either,
so we have, and for good reasons, for very good reasons, as we can see also with this, these vast sums of migrants wanting to come to Britain. Now, the thing is also, what does it mean for train travel? Because so far we've been able to move freely onto trains, but we've seen. Remember Barcelona? Madrid. Remember in Madrid, we have seen attacks on trains, and we can't. It's just physically not possible for us, because train is also, for commuters. It's physically not possible to go through the whole rigmarole of checks that we have in airports.
But it does raise the question, isn't it? For example, if you're getting a flight from Amsterdam to Paris, you go through all the security checks, your liquids are checked, your bags are screened, and yet if you hop on a train from Amsterdam to Paris with another 1,000 people, you take your luggage on and you throw it into the racks and...
That's it.
The debate is it feasible to have sort of airport-style security on a train? I mean, how much is that going to slow everything down?
And think of what it would mean also for on planes you have hold luggage. Think of what it would mean for trains to have these train hold luggage compartments. We would have to reconfigure all the trains. It would be logistically quite
the
messy.
reason this is really interesting, though, is because, OK, so it's 30 years since we saw the introduction of freedom of movement across the EU, but it's actually the Belgium Prime Minister that's initiated this discussion, who's one of its fiercest advocates. So,
yeah, but sometimes needs must, and we live in scary times.
We do indeed, and I think it's important to highlight. And the Schengen Agreement is already under a bit of pressure, right? With Greece and the crisis with the migrants, arriving in Italy and Greece as well, and attempting to cross into the north. So that's already under pressure. So let's move on to the Wall Street Journal, shall we? Talk about the Koreas.
Yeah.
North and South. I mean, boy, there's some rather tense situations happening at the moment. I was just reading here, South Korea's defence minister said around 70% of Pyongyang's submarines were away from their bases on Sunday in an unusually large deployment.
Yes, exactly. And you see that the North Korean government says South Korea needs to apologise because they blurred their propaganda across the border, the demilitarized zone.
Big speakers.
Yes, big speakers. And the North Korean and the South Koreans, I said, North Koreans need to apologise. I don't quite know what they actually try to achieve, because the North Koreans, because they're in no position to wage war against anybody, they're essentially close to bankrupt. I'm sure it will quiet down.
Scarier though, doesn't it?
Yeah, but it's. I think they will. Yeah, they have a couple, but I think at some stage they cannot afford a war, and so they will not
launch a war. But we're seeing South Korea hold their ground on this one, aren't they? We're seeing the president there; she's demanding an apology. So we're going to have to see where these talks go.
I'm sure the talks will stop with talking, but there will be quite a bit of talking.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Let's look at the China Daily. I think it's good that we're looking at this particular paper for this story. I mean, it's your top one on business today, isn't it? These ongoing movements on Asian stock markets, and now this sort of surprise announcement from the Chinese government about what they're going to do with pension funds.
Yeah, and Shanghai down another 8%. This is off the back of a loss of collectively over last week 12%, 30% down since June.
The global markets have lost since June something like $5 trillion.
$5 trillion.
Yeah, which is scary. But what we see here, they needed to let the pension funds at some stage participate in equities. So how fast
the government just announced that pension funds are going to gain access to
30% of them, right? 30 they're going to take the state pension fund, 30% of it will be invested.
It can be invested. Not will be invested, can be invested. But, you know, there will be time lag. The markets are down, so they will probably not see that as a buying opportunity. And then the Chinese pension system is very fragmented and city or municipality controlled. So this is going to be something that will work its way into the system over time, but not tomorrow.
Okay. But is there a concern there that if they're using this as a tool to try and stabilise the markets, and they've used billions of yuan, billions of dollars, over the past few weeks to try and do the same thing. It hasn't worked. Investors don't believe it. If they're now using up to 30%, possibly, of people's pensions and the funds into the markets continue to fall. That's people's pensions that they're playing with.
That's people's pensions. But as I said, I don't think it will happen that quickly. And it's just this whole, what we're seeing in China now is a reorientation, or part of a reorientation of the economy. Let's not forget, you know, that the Chinese economy has grown by building infrastructure, building manufacturing, and they're moving more towards services. I mean, it is coming down from the, double-digit growth to the 7% growth and 9% growth to the 7% growth. So this is a readjustment, and these sort of readjustments are usually, macroeconomic readjustments are usually quite painful.
Yeah, it's going through a huge transition.
Very quickly, let's do it.
Let's go on to the Financial Times, because this is your area of specialism, Cornelia, oil. Israel turning to Iraq's Kurds for the majority of its oil supplies. What do you read into this story?
Well, I mean, they probably the Israelis are very good at bargaining. They were probably able to get very, very good discounts, because somehow the Kurds need to get the oil out of the system.
They're being very opaque about the level of discounting.
Exactly. So this is that, and this is also probably an Israeli attempt to sort of do its bit of mingle. It's limited in how it can interact in the Middle East. Its bit of interacting in the Middle East.
And just very quickly, Cornelia, we just want to ask you about
30 seconds,
whether you've ever been annoyed with a colleague, and if so, would you talk about it on an app?
No, I would talk to the colleague.
Oh, straight to thing.
Yeah,
okay. I was going to say, what happens to the boss? But you talk to the boss, I guess.
Yeah, I would talk to the boss, and you know, it has gotten me into a lot. It has gotten me into a lot of trouble. But I'd rather do things face to face and straight and behind people's backs. I think it's a better way.
Straight talking, face to face. That's his advice from Cornelia Meyer. Good to talk to you. Thanks so much. Aaron and I will be back shortly. Stay with us.
I'm getting on the app.